Imagine standing on a mountain peak so high that even the wind forgets to breathe, and suddenly hearing voices echoing from beneath your feet. Not from caves, not from cracks, but from a hidden world carved directly inside the bones of the mountains themselves. A world so old that its people vanished before our first civilizations even learned to write. A world known only in forbidden folklore as the people of the sky tunnels. Today, we uncover a truth buried under peaks, trapped under stone, and whispered by winds that never forget. Welcome to the channel. If you love ancient mysteries, lost civilizations, and the secrets time tried to erase, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and join us as we dive straight into a story that has slept in silence for thousands of years, until now. Our journey begins with something strange, strange enough to make even the bravest explorers lose sleep. In the winter of 1996, a team of high-altitude researchers studying atmospheric pressure on Mount Siren in the Caucasus region reported a sound coming from inside the mountain. Not the shifting of ice, not the groaning of stone, but a rhythmic echo like footsteps. Then, 3 seconds later, a whisper. They recorded it, played it back, and the whisper repeated. A word in no known language, a voice coming from behind 30 meters of solid granite. The mystery was dismissed until the mountain opened its throat again. But today, we're not starting in 1996. We're going back, way back, to a time when these mountains were not silent, when the sky above them glowed not blue but silver, and when a secret race thrived inside a labyrinth so vast that the world above never knew they existed. You see, long before we built cities, before we carved roads, before we even discovered fire in its true usefulness, another race walked the earth, but not on its surface. They lived within it. They were called the Aeryth, and according to ancient forbidden myths, they were born not from the soil, but from the sky. The story of the Aeryth begins in an age when the climate of the earth was different, when storms raged across continents for centuries, when mountains cracked under the weight of eternal ice, and when the sky glowed with a shimmering haze caused by massive volcanic clouds. Humans were primitive, scattered, and terrified of the world around them, but the Aeryth, they adapted. They were explorers of stone. Architects of air. The first beings to realize the mountains were not obstacles, but guardians. Instead of climbing peaks, they dug into them. Instead of fighting the storms, they sheltered beneath them. And soon, in secret, they built a kingdom of tunnels, chambers, and sky shafts that ran down thousands of meters, forming a hidden world inside the tallest mountains on Earth. Their earliest tunnels were carved using sound. Yes, sound. This is where the legend becomes unbelievable, but somehow still feels true. According to the oldest surviving fragments of their lore, the Aeryth used vibrating stones that resonated when struck. These stones produced a low frequency that softened the surrounding rock, making it malleable like clay. They could carve entire passages with harmonic tools that converted sound into force. Imagine a civilization that built with echo instead of hammer, with vibration instead of metal. Their tunnels twisted, spiraled, and branched like the roots of an ancient tree. And at the very center of this subterranean world was something called the Wind Throne, a colossal chamber the size of a modern stadium, carved at the exact midpoint of 3 massive peaks. Here they gathered to share knowledge, to celebrate creation, to observe the weather patterns above through narrow vertical shafts that opened into the sky. They were not primitive, they were brilliant. Their society was structured around learning. Their children were taught to read the wind the way we read books. Their elders trained themselves to hear distant storms the way we recognize footsteps. They believed the sky was alive and the mountains were the body of that living sky. They believed the world above was too young, too chaotic, too unshaped to live on. But deep below, inside the mountain, was stability. A place where stone could not betray them, a place where storms could never reach. But every thriving civilization faces a turning point. For the Aeryth, that turning point appeared in the form of light, a strange pulsing light that began to seep down the vertical sky shafts. It wasn't sunlight, it wasn't fire, it was something else, a shimmering silver glow, like the sky itself was cracking open. The Aeryth believed it was a sign. Some said it meant the sky spirit was awakening. Others whispered of danger. The truth? Something massive was happening above them, something the surface world remembers as the Great Melt, a rapid climate shift that began to tear apart ice caps and flood entire regions. The mountains trembled under the strain of thawing ice. Water began seeping into the upper tunnels. Cracks appeared in chambers that had stood for thousands of years. For the first time in their history, the Aeryth felt fear. The sky shafts that once fed them pure air now brought in roaring winds full of moisture and thunder. The storms no longer stayed above. They fell inside. Lightning surged down the narrow shafts like living serpents of fire. Some of the Aeryth were burned alive, others drowned, and entire sections of the sky tunnels collapsed. The elders gathered at the wind throne and came to a devastating conclusion. They could not survive underground anymore. The world above, once too chaotic to live in, had become the only place left. But there was a problem. The Aeryth had never lived outside stone. They weren't adapted to it. Their eyes were too sensitive to light. Their lungs were too fine for the harsh winds. Their skin too pale for the sun. And worst of all, they had no settlements, no shelters, no food sources on the surface. The surface to them was death, but staying below meant annihilation. So the elders made a desperate decision. They would ascend, slowly, carefully, cautiously, and search for new land. They carved massive exit corridors leading up to the mountain shoulders, but what they found horrified them. Humans. Primitive, territorial, frightened humans. And humans saw the Aeryth as monsters, ghost white skin, reflective eyes, tall, almost weightless bodies, and voices that echoed unnaturally because of their training with resonance. The humans attacked, the Aeryth retreated, and the two species never communicated again. As the Great Melt continued, the tunnels began collapsing at a terrifying rate. The Aeryth split into two factions, those who believed they must adapt and live above ground, and those who believed the sky was punishing them and they must burrow deeper. The second faction began the Deep Descent Project, digging downwards into even older rock layers, hoping to reach a mythical cavern system said to be untouched by time. The others continued upward, but neither path saved them. The upward faction faced conflict with early humans, starvation, exposure, disease. The downward faction faced pressure, toxic gases, and rock collapses. The Aeryth were being erased from both directions. The last known record, etched on a stone tablet discovered in 1912, describes their final council meeting. A heartbreaking message. The sky rejects us. The earth rejects us. We vanish in the space between. And with that, the Aeryth disappeared. But the story isn't over, because in 1996, when researchers heard rhythmic footsteps inside the mountain, they were unknowingly standing above the oldest section of the sky tunnels. And those whispers? They matched the sonic structure of the Aeryth language. Not perfectly, but closely enough to raise a terrifying question. Did some Aeryth survive? Could fragments of their civilization still exist inside collapsed chambers, sealed away for millennia?
Were those footsteps echoes from the past, sound waves bouncing from chambers long destroyed? Or were they something else, something alive? When they returned in 1997 with more advanced equipment, they lowered a probe into a thin crevice newly exposed by glacier melt. What they found was impossible. A smooth tunnel wall, perfectly polished, displaying harmonic tool marks. The first human discovery of an Aeryth tunnel. After climate shifts exposed more regions, dozens of such tunnels were found in Siberia, the Caucasus, the Altai Mountains, and the Pamirs, all showing identical architecture. Some were impossibly smooth, others curved in spirals that defied human engineering. And then came the discovery that changed everything. A sky shaft, a vertical tunnel leading straight upward, ending at a tiny round opening on a peak thousands of meters above sea level. The same opening that once let light and wind inside the Aeryth world. But here's the part that chills explorers even today. The opening was still warm, as if something not human, had passed through it recently. And so the legend continues, a hidden race that lived beneath mountains, a society that mastered sound, a lost civilization erased by climate, conflict, and collapse. But maybe, just maybe, not fully gone. Maybe some Aeryth survived in sealed pockets of their ancient world. Maybe they adapted further. Maybe they walk the tunnels still. And maybe someday, one of those echoes you hear while climbing a mountain will not be an echo at all, but the Aeryth listening back. If you want more stories like this, hidden civilizations, vanished cultures, and mysteries buried under time, make sure to subscribe to the channel. You've been watching Echoes of Time, and the mountains are still listening.